We are going to begin our program in just a few minutes. So as you join us, please let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. And I'll take a moment to read off kind of where everybody's coming from as we see the numbers rise in our participant numbers. We're expecting about a little over 200 people today from every time zone across the world. So welcome, welcome. So I'm joining from Washington, D.C. I know Fareed Zakaria, I think he's joining us from New York. We've got London, New Hampshire, Alexandria, Virginia. Keep them coming. Huntington, New York, Brooklyn, Santa Monica, California, Accokeek, Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, North Carolina, Ottawa, Canada, Montauk, Reno, Poughkeepsie, Berlin, Detroit, Philippines, Columbus, Ohio, St. Pete's, Florida, New York City, Cupertino, and from Guam and Micronesia, Weston, Florida. That's the beauty of bringing together everybody on Zoom. It's amazing just to see where everybody's coming from, and we can take a moment together no matter what time it is. So it is pretty cool. About 85. Got about 85 people. We'll give it another minute or two. All right. Okay, I'm getting the thumbs up. So let's get started. Very, very excited to be here today. Welcome to our first ever virtual awards benefit. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Jennifer Clinton. I'm President and CEO of Cultural Vistas. On behalf of the entire board of directors and staff at Cultural Vistas, I'm thrilled to welcome you to our 2020 awards benefit. As I said, the first time that we're doing this virtually. And we all know the benefits and sometimes the downsides of technology. So, we're doing our best in making sure that everybody's connected and is able to engage with us today. And I know we'd all kind of rather be together in person, but it is wonderful that, we can see where everybody's joining from so many different places around the world and really bring this truly global community together. So we're grateful you've made the time to be with us today. It really means a lot. And I will say it goes without saying that the past 7 months have been incredibly challenging for all of us. I'd like to start with a moment of silence for those who have lost their lives or their loved ones during the tragedy of this pandemic. Thank you. We wish you all good health and the wherewithal to remain resilient to emerge stronger from the trauma we're living through today. I want to take a moment to thank and recognize all of our generous supporters who have helped us continue to deliver on our mission, as well as our speakers, our collaborators for today and tomorrow's events. I want to share a huge shout out to our amazing board of directors at Cultural Vistas, starting with our board chair, Jeff Ranke, and our development committee chair, Susan Stella, who've made today possible. And I also want to thank our board member, Roy Salome, for inviting our keynote speaker today, Fareed Zakaria. Thank you all for being such incredible leaders and helping us through this challenging time. Finally, I want to thank and recognize the Cultural Vistas team, starting with Emily Comer, who's really been the brains behind all of this, Lauren Salisbury, Laura Gross, our global trivia team that will be showcasing tomorrow, as well as our tech teams. Really, you all inspire me every single day. So thanks for all of your work on this. Before we dive in, I have a few housekeeping notes to share with you. Today's program will include a keynote address, followed by a question and answer. Then we will present our corporate leader and alumni awardees, both of which will be followed by a discussion. We want you to join these conversations, so please be active and type in your questions and comments in the chat throughout the conversations. Feel free to share any emojis, claps, anything you want. We also encourage you to be active on social media. We are active on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Cultural Vistas. We'll be sharing program highlights there, and we welcome your thoughts as well using the hashtag #CVBenefit. We will take a little break after our keynote, so you can get up and move around a little bit. And we do have a couple of video segments just to kind of showcase, our community and share with you a little bit of what it is that we do. Our program today will run until 3 p.m. and it will be followed by a 3 p.m. Eastern time, and it will be followed by a virtual networking gathering. So please stick around and connect with your colleagues, and we'll just take a moment to be informal and social. If for any reason you're disconnected during the program, please join us again by following the link in your pre-event email. And if you need any assistance with technology during the program, we're here to help. Please reach out via email at events@culturalvistas.org or send a private chat question to the team member, Laura Gross, who is monitoring. So one final request: in addition to bringing our community together today, we also have the goal to raise funds to help carry out our mission. In such a challenging year, your support is more crucial than ever. If you'd like to make a donation to Cultural Vistas, we welcome that. You can text us at CV2020 to 44321. Most of you know Cultural Vistas, but for those who are learning about us for the first time, I just want to give you a sense of who we are. Our overall purpose is to equip emerging leaders with diverse skills, perspectives, and experiences to work together to solve shared challenges in their lives and careers. We do this through facilitating international education and exchange programs. Our organization was born out of the Second World War and sought to restore diplomatic relations between the United States and Germany. Since then, we've expanded our reach in significant ways and now work with over 130 countries, and in a normal year, engage with over 6,000 participants who we help develop immersive global work and learning experiences. Over the past 6 decades, that has translated into a community of alumni of over 150,000 leaders around the world, dozens of whom are with us today, and they're making profound differences in their communities. The individuals who participate in our programs serve as bridge builders. They serve as social change makers, government and corporate leaders, teachers, entrepreneurs, and most importantly, peace builders. Today, we will recognize 3 of them with our alumni awards, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from those incredible individuals and learning how they are working to make the world a better place. Our work is also fueled by our partners. Many of them are with us today as well. We work with hundreds of universities around the world, US and foreign governments, foundations, and over 1,000 companies in the US and abroad that bring international talent to their teams. They range from Fortune 500 companies like our corporate awardee today, to growing startups and family-owned businesses. All of these entities share a common commitment to opening pathways for increased understanding and global cooperation. In recognition of the role our partners play in advancing our mission, this year we're thrilled to recognize Cisco with our Corporate Leadership Award. Cisco not only builds bridges across the globe with its technological innovation, but also with its commitment to developing a truly global workforce. We're incredibly fortunate to hear from Sherry Slate, Chief Inclusion and Collaboration Officer at Cisco, who will accept the award and share more about the company's commitment to power an inclusive future for all. Thank you, Cisco, for your partnership and support. Normally, as I said earlier, we'd be hosting this event in person over a nice dinner, and we'd have the chance to have those informal conversations and make new connections. Though we do miss that, we also recognize the opportunity the virtual format presents to make today's event more geographically, financially, and chronologically more accessible and inclusive. This moment in time has exposed like never before the political, economic, and ideological divisions within communities and amongst nations, which calls us forward in profound ways to bridge those ever-increasing divides. As an organization and community, Cultural Vistas has been working together to be prepared to lead in a time such as this one, when collaboration and understanding across cultures is more important than ever to reach sustainable solutions to our greatest challenges. We're committed to stepping forward in a bold way to seize the opportunity to both strengthen and reimagine how we can be a catalyst for global cooperation. And as our keynote speaker, Fareed Zakaria, wrote in his recent book, we must view the global pandemic as a spur to global cooperation and action. This chapter in history has opened up a new path to a new world. We must seize that opportunity. For our community at Cultural Vistas, that specifically means really providing much greater access and inclusion of individuals and populations that simply have not had access to international education and exchange opportunities due to financial and other barriers. We also must be better about utilizing technology to spur the cooperation to tackle the small and large problems we face. It's more cost effective and can allow for more voices to be at the table, just like it is today. And we want to continue to lean into our storied legacy of building global leaders and offering programs that meet the rising challenges of the modern era. I can think of no better person to help us explore how we can seize this moment and truly reform our societies and carve a path to a new world than today's keynote speaker, Fareed Zakaria. Welcome, Fareed. We're so honored to have you with us today with what we know is an incredibly busy time for you with events happening all around the world, and you also sharing your wonderful book with us. So thanks for being a beacon of hope during this challenging time. Fareed is a CNN worldwide host, columnist for the Washington Post, and a best-selling author. An expert in international relations, he's interviewed many of the world's leaders who dominate our headlines today. He joins us on the heels of the release of a new book. If you haven't gotten it, hopefully you'll get it and start reading it as soon as possible. 10 Lessons for a Post-Pandemic World. Fareed will share about 20, 25 minutes with us and his remarks, and then we'll take questions from the audience for about 15, 20 minutes at the end of his remarks. So please, if you have a question for Fareed, feel free to put it in the chat, and we will be able to read out as many of those questions as we possibly can. So with no further ado, I want to extend a very warm welcome to Fareed. Thanks for being here, and we can't wait to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Have I unmuted myself to begin with? Can somebody tell me if they can hear me?
Yep, you're great.
Yeah.
You sound great.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. This is a huge pleasure for me. I just love an organization like Cultural Vistas. I love what you do. I love the kind of people involved in it. So for me, this is a special treat and a pleasure and an honor that you'd have me. So thank you. As Jennifer said, I think what I'll do is try to talk for a little bit and then really want to hear from you and understand what your concerns are and what your questions are. And by the way, you can ask me anything if you want to ask me who I think is going to win the election. That's fine too. But what I thought I'd do is begin by just talking about this extraordinary moment we're all in. This hit me when I was talking to an Indian businessman a couple of months ago. And he was telling me why he thought this pandemic was going to be a much bigger deal than really anything we had experienced before. He said, take somebody like me and my world. He said, 9/11 was nothing for me. 9/11 was something that happened in America. It was between America and in some Middle Eastern countries. It caused the United States to do all kinds of things, launch wars, change its security apparatus. We got a little bit of stuff at the airports, but it really didn't change our lives very much. Then he said, look at the global financial crisis. Yes, global financial, true, but he said, I never had any derivatives. Nobody I knew had derivatives. None of the companies I dealt with or worked with in any way were affected by it. There was something of a slowdown, and so we had to deal with that. But it was mostly, again, something that a certain group of countries and a certain group of companies within them, those that were leveraged, that had some access to financial products, those were the ones that were affected. He said, I look at this one. Every single human being in the world has been affected by this pandemic. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what you do. In some way or the other, you have been shaped by the pandemic and then the economic response that followed, the shutdowns, the quarantines, all that. And that really is extraordinary. And I think you have to go back to something like World War II, World War I, to see an event that has had that kind of truly global, universal effect. And so one of the questions that I think we are all trying to grapple with is, what does it mean and where does it lead us? And as Jennifer kindly said, that's why I wrote this book furiously over the last 4 or 5 months, trying to make sense of it and trying to help others make sense of it. Probably the most important way to think about what has happened here is that it is a great accelerator. Sometimes you have moments in history where things get dramatically changed. But I think the pandemic is a case where you've accelerated all kinds of trends that were already happening. And so you look at digital life and the very meeting we're at, or you look at something like telemedicine. You used to be very difficult to get people to go to their doctors online. People wanted to go do that in person. They felt like, there was some kind of a reassurance they wanted, even if, they just had a headache and they wanted to go to the doctor, and the doctor would say to them, take an aspirin and call me then in the morning if it persists. You didn't want to do that online for some reason. And by the way, the doctor didn't want to do it because he wasn't getting paid to do it via phone call or online. What's happened is those barriers have broken. People didn't want to hold a big gala event like this one online. Well, that barrier has been broken. Now, some of these things will return to what they were. Some of them will become entirely online, and some of them will have a hybrid form. And I suspect that will be the future. But in any event, we accelerated this trend. So it used to be believed that by the end of 2030, we would have 1 billion telemedicine visits between patient and doctor. That would take about 10 years to get to 1 billion in America. Well, we will hit 1 billion probably in a month, at the pace at which we're going right now. So you have already accelerated life 10 years in that sense. And you can imagine it in various other ways. But there is another aspect to this pandemic that I think is very important to talk about, which is that it has also been a great revealer. It has revealed to us some of the outlines of the world we live in sharper contrast than we realize them. So one thing we have come to realize in the United States is that we do not have nearly as capable a government as we thought. And one of the lessons I talk about is that we have been obsessed in much of the Western world, and certainly in America, with this question of, what is the size of your government? What is the size of your state? With taxes, spending, etc. But really what this pandemic has revealed that is not the quantity of government that matters, it's the quality. A place like Taiwan, which really gets the gold star for its handling of the pandemic, spends 1/3 as much as the United States does per capita on healthcare. And yet it had an early, aggressive, intelligent response to the extent that Taiwan is a country of 24 million people. It has had 7 COVID deaths. That is not a typo, 7. New York State, by contrast, has 19 million people, and it has had 35,000 deaths, roughly 35,000 deaths. All of the United States' death rate compared to Taiwan is 2,000 times greater per capita. And this is supposed to be the most technologically advanced society in the world, particularly in medicine, biotech, pharma. Why? Well, because one of the things the United States has not spent a lot of time trying to get right is government, making sure that government works and it works for everyone. One of the things we have realized in this pandemic is none of us is secure unless everyone is secure. None of us is healthy unless all of us are healthy. And while the American system is very good at the high end, it is not that good in terms of access, and particularly not that good for people who lack the means. And so what you have in the United States is a very patchy system, which does not integrate well, which is not uniform, and does not provide people the assurance that, for example, they can go and get tested, that if they have the disease, they will be taken care of. And so you have lots of people who never got tested, never figured out what they had, for fear that this was all going to cost money. That recognition, I hope, would be a great wake-up call in the United States. And there are wake-up calls in other countries as well. India, the country I grew up in, has also proved to have a pretty dysfunctional government. Many people realize that anyway, but the pandemic has sort of shone a bright light on that problem and made Indians realize, if you look at neighboring Asian countries and how well they have handled it, and look at India and ask yourself, why couldn't they get their act together? Vietnam, another poor country, has done extraordinarily well. Again, not spending vast resources, early, aggressive, intelligent action. Those are the keys, testing and tracing. It isn't rocket science. It's just implementing it turns out to be very hard. The greatest acceleration that people talk about is the degree to which this pandemic has exposed some of the fissures and fault lines and cracks in globalization. And that's what I want to talk about, because this is a group for whom this is a very important topic, near and dear to your heads and your hearts. I think this is a case where there is more smoke and mirrors than reality, by which I mean you hear from everybody that globalization is now dead. We are entering a phase of deglobalization. People are turning inward. And it's certainly true that if you listen to some of the rhetoric from President Trump, from Prime Minister Modi, even from some European leaders, they all talk about the need for self-reliance, self-sufficiency. They felt they were exposed to global supply chains where they couldn't get what they needed in time. But then if you dig underneath the surface, what you discover is, while there will be modest adjustments here and there, people will presumably, try to make face masks in the United States. So that strikes me as a pretty silly idea, because we don't know what the next crisis will be. And what often happens in these situations is governments are caught fighting the last war. But you will see some adjustments like that. But for the most part, the reality of the global economy is one you cannot walk away from. The United States is 5% of the world's population. It has to deal with the other 95% of the world if it wants to grow in resources, in talent and resources, in ideas, in goods and services. And if that's true for the United States, it's 10 times as true for other countries. The United States still has a very large internal domestic market. But even a country like Germany, half the German economy is its foreign trade. Germany simply would not be able to have anything close to the standards of living it has if it didn't trade, which is why one of the things to note is that while we've been watching the United States retreat under Donald Trump in terms of trade, we have higher tariffs right now than at any point since the 1930s, since the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. That is not true of other countries. Other countries have moved forward with more free trade. So we withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but that didn't stop the rest of the world from going ahead. The other 11 countries of the Trans-Pacific Partnership banded together, did the deal just without America. The European Union is making separate trade deals, expanding trade with China. The African Union is making an African trade, free trade area for the first time. So the arrow is actually pointing in the direction of more trade rather than less. I suspect that as we get out of this pandemic, you will see these efforts accelerate because people need growth, countries need growth. And so much of the growth is now in the digital economy, in which it's not even clear how you would categorize something as domestic or foreign. And this is something that Cisco is largely responsible for, building that architecture of a digital economy that is global. I mean, how would you ban somebody from sending an email to an accounting firm in the Philippines? Or how would you ban somebody from sending an attached file of an X-ray to a doctor in India to review or give a second opinion on? That is the nature of the digital economy, and that is the part of the economy that's growing so fast. So when people tell you globalization is dead, just remember that. Remember what is going on in Africa. Remember what is going on with the digital economy. Remember what is going on in Asia. And remember, those are the vast parts of the world. The largest and most dynamic part of the world today is not the United States, it's Asia. 1 billion new middle-class consumers will come out of Asia in the next decade. And they are looking precisely for more trade, more interaction than anywhere else. Let me close with some thoughts on the United States, though, because I think even here, you see the dynamic that I'm talking about at work, which is to say, we know we're going through a very difficult period in the United States politically, great divisions, partisanship. And one way to look at that is to look at a country that is deadlocked and dysfunctional, that has elected somebody who seems to dislike foreigners and foreign trade. But another way to look at it is to see the United States trying to do something very hard and in a period of great transition. The United States is genuinely trying to create the first universal nation, a nation founded on the basis of immigration, but also accepting large numbers of immigrants and truly trying to make them feel included and seen and respected. And it's not just about immigrants. It's about trying to make sure that Blacks within America feel that the historic and disgraceful discrimination against them that lasted for centuries is finally being addressed and being rooted out throughout the society. It's making sure that gays and lesbians are fully equal citizens in every sense of the word. It's making sure that everyone feels in some way or the other seen and heard and respected, and feels that they are, kind of central to the American dream and not peripheral, or don't have to sit in the shadows while watching other people. That process is proving to be very messy, noisy, disruptive, in which there are all kinds of overreactions, and the pendulum swings too far in one direction, then goes back the other. You have an emphasis, perhaps too much of an emphasis on what exactly are the terms you use to describe people and what pronouns to use. And all this is happening, but it's happening from a good place, from a place of trying to ask, how do we honor and include and respect people? And there will be some silliness in it, and there will be some overreactions in it. But think about the journey we're on. And that journey is to create the first universal nation, a nation truly democratic, truly diverse, truly pluralistic. And there is a reaction to it. It is disruptive. It worries people. It makes people anxious. It makes an older generation feel as though the world is turning and changing too fast. And there will be some people who simply look at it with fear and anger. But the truth of the matter is, I think there are more people who want this forward-looking vision of the United States. I think there are more people who want to make America great by leaning into the future than lapsing back into the past, into some nostalgic vision of the past, which, by the way, was never nearly as rosy as people make it out to be. And I think that reality of a new America is coming into being. And you can see it when you look at the younger people for whom the global cultural exchanges that you talk about and promote are simply a fact of life, for whom the idea of being respectful to people, no matter where they come from, no matter what they look like, no matter what their sexual orientation, is second nature. People for whom the idea that the United States must be this universal democratic nation is as close to true patriotism as saluting the flag. And I think that forward-looking vision of the United States is ultimately going to win. And I believe that forward-looking vision of the United States is ultimately going to change the world, because the United States did begin this process first, and many, many other countries are doing it as well now. You look at Canada, and you look at Australia, you look at England, you look at European countries that now have as high a percentage of foreign-born people as the United States does. And they are all struggling with this same process, and they're all seeing a certain backlash. And even in countries like India, where there are historical issues between majorities and minorities, you are seeing the same divide between some people who say, we want an older, more monocultural idea, and the others who are celebrating this more multicultural reality. I have no doubt in my mind which way it's going to end up going. And I have no doubt that which one is a better, more inclusive, and ultimately more sustainable and stable path. But the path can be complicated. And that's where I want to end by saying what you do is so important, because what Cultural Vistas is doing is to remind people that there is a world out there, that it is rich and diverse, that it requires enormous amount of energy and attention. And in doing this, what you are doing is strengthening the process, strengthening the ultimate goal that I've been talking about. And so I just want to say to you, keep doing what you're doing. Do it with pride and with strength and with vigor. And know that at the end of the day, you are not just on the side of the good guys, the good people, but ultimately you will prevail. Thank you very much.
Fareed, thank you so much. Really, really inspiring. Gives us all great hope, and also a recommitment to what it is that we do. So I'm going to turn to the audience. We have some great questions coming in.
On less than $2 a day, what the UN describes as abject poverty or extreme poverty. And so there is a very powerful argument to be made that says, look, just focus on economic growth as much as you can, because that lifts these people out of poverty. Their children don't die of malnutrition. They are able to provide for themselves. They're able to have 2 meals a day. And that has been one of the great success stories of the global community over the last 30 years. If you look at the number of people who are living in abject poverty today, it is a quarter as a percentage of what it was 25 years ago. A quarter. It's about 500 million people have been raised out of poverty. The tragedy is, because of this pandemic, about 100 million are going to be forced back into poverty by the end of this year. And if we don't get our acts together, perhaps 100 or 200 more will be forced back into it. And again, I just want to emphasize, no matter what the second order effects are, just keep in mind, for those of you who have ever traveled to these places, what you are talking about is people living in such poor conditions that they literally do not have a meal to eat, a nutritious meal to eat every day. And that kind of poverty is surely something we can all agree we want to get rid of. So I don't want us to lose the focus on that as the kind of central challenge that we face in the world, particularly given a pandemic that is actually moving people in the opposite direction. There is a large and important question about how to make this work when there are 4 billion people out there who are going to be trying to all raise their standards of living simultaneously. What is the impact on the world? What is the impact on the... I believe there are many sustainable ways to do this. To start with, if we were able to have cleaner sources of energy, you would have a much more sustainable way of doing this. And we are very close to being able to do that in many areas. There are some in which we are not, but if you look at the cost of solar, if you look at the cost of wind, all these things are going down dramatically. We have to start thinking more about the way in which we eat. Factory farming is one of the great dangers that we face. My worry is that the next pandemic is going to come out of this world of factory farming. We have to think about the way we are living, subsidizing people to live at the edges of forests and on the the peripheries of coasts, which is highly dangerous. And by the way, we all subsidize it when things go badly. So there are those legitimate issues, and I don't want to, and I talk about them in the book, but I don't want us to ever forget that we are all who are on this call today living a life of luxury compared to many hundreds of millions of people who are not. And the first order of business must be to try to help those people escape poverty.
Thanks. To build on that, great question came in. Many governments, including our own, are investing billions of dollars in pandemic recovery. So given the vastly increasing level of international public debt, what do you see prior to and during COVID? What is the outlook on this issue in terms of public debt going forward? How is that going to impact nations?
I think this is one more area where we're going to see a great rise of inequality. It's one of the things one of the chapters in my book is inequality is going to get worse. I think that for some countries, the countries that have control over their own currencies, whose currencies are widely used or respected, it's not going to mean that much, honestly, because interest rates are at their lowest they have ever been and are likely to stay very low for very long. In that environment, you can borrow more and you can spend more. I mean, what the size of the house you could buy in 1975 when interest rates were 16 or 17% is different from the kind of house you can buy when interest rates are 2%. For the United States government, there is no practical limit on how much it can spend because the dollar is the world's reserve currency. The United States can, by the way, debt service as a percentage of GDP is not nearly as high today as it was in 1975, 1980. So while we have a lot more debt, surely the most relevant question is, what does it cost to service that debt? So all of which is to say, for a country like America or China or Germany, essentially you can spend a lot of money today. All the concerns you should have are on spending too little to help people who are in desperate situations. For countries that have to borrow money from, that have to borrow in another currency, who have to earn money in rupees and borrow in dollars, or earn money in Turkish lira and borrow in euros, that is a whole different challenge. And they are very constrained. And that is one of the reasons you will see greater inequality, not just within countries, but between countries, where the rich will get richer and the poor will find themselves more constrained.
Thank you. I'm going to combine two questions that came in. One is around, how do we heal? You talk a lot about inequality in your book and in Today, and this emerging divide between haves and have-nots. How do we heal the deep divide in our country that seems to be getting deeper and deeper every day? And I'll combine that with the role of civil society. What can civil society do to help bridge that divide?
It's a very difficult question because the divide is not just political. I think it's important for people to understand that. It has become a cultural divide. It has become a class divide. It has become a geographic divide. So when you look at the differences between the people, broadly speaking, who are voting for Trump and who are voting for Joe Biden, the single biggest indicator is party registration. So party loyalty matters. But after that, the biggest indicator is college degree. People with a college degree are most likely to vote for Biden, and without one, most likely to vote for Trump. Whether you live in a metro area, huge indicator of your political views. Whether you work in a service-oriented world, huge indicator. So, whether you have any minority, multicultural aspect to your or your family's life, huge indicator. So you see what I'm saying is these differences are stacking up and reinforcing each other so that they become cultural and class differences, not just political differences. And those are very difficult to heal and very difficult to bridge because the issues that they raise are often ones that are difficult to bridge. So in the old days, the big divide was economic, economic conservatives versus economic liberals. Well, the conservatives would want to spend very little money, the liberals would want to spend a lot. There's a way to bridge that divide, right? If you want to spend nothing and I want to spend $100, there's a number in between those two. How do you bridge the divide on abortion? How do you bridge the divide on gay marriage? How do you bridge the divide even on something like immigration, where one side sees the country being utterly transformed and destroyed and the other sees this as the essence of what it means to be American? So I think that to your point, Jennifer, about civil society, the thing we have to hope for is that the more we get to know each other, the more we will understand each other's concerns and empathize with them. And it's not an idle thought. I mean, it is striking to me that the most anti-immigrant parts of the United States are the places where there are no immigrants. And the most pro-immigrant parts of the United States are places like New York and San Francisco and Chicago and Washington that have lots of immigrants. And I think partly that's because it's easy to be scared and be made to be scared of abstractions, of these horrible immigrants who are going to destroy your culture and change America. When you actually live with them, you see them as actual human beings who share your dreams and hopes and fears, who are trying to do the same things you're trying to do. Put a meal on the table, educate your kids, look out for your future. So I think that the more you can make people understand that ultimately we are all the same. and that we have similar concerns, or that you can understand each other's concerns, I think we go some way towards it. I don't believe that there is a rational strategy here, by which I mean, I don't think this is about facts and figures. This is about emotion. This is a gut reaction. And the only way you change gut reactions is by contact, by seeing, by watching, by looking, by observing, and just noticing that, at the end of the day, we are actually all very similar.
Thank you. To follow up on kind of the gut feeling, I had a question come in. It's a personal question, and you're gracious to say you answer many different things, but have you yourself experienced that kind of discrimination as an immigrant and as an Indian American?
It's a great question because, for most of my life, I've been in the United States now 38 years. And for most of my life, I would have said, absolutely not. I came to this country, I was a poor kid from India on a scholarship with a brown skin, funny name. And I was actually stunned at how welcoming the country was, at how open it was, at how easy it was to do almost anything I wanted. And so for the most part, I have had an experience with America which was incredibly benign and kind of affirmed all the best things about America. I would say after 9/11, I saw a little bit of discrimination and kind of anxiousness and anger, but it wasn't large, and it wasn't held by respectable people and respectable outlets. It was still not okay to behave like that. If you remember, right after 9/11, the day after 9/11, George Bush, a Republican president, went to a mosque because he wanted to affirm that this was not about Islam, the religion, but about a certain group of people who happened to be Muslim and were perverting the religion. Since 1915 and 16, really the rise of Donald Trump, I have seen another America, which has been very angry and nasty and mean-spirited, and has been legitimized by Trump. And I've, whether it's my Twitter feed, I've had, stuff come to my office, people calling my house, threatening my children. I have had some experience of that. And it's been unnerving and more than anything else, very saddening. But I have to tell you, I still, on balance, think that is a very much a minority view. That is very much a view that has been manipulated and encouraged by political leaders. I don't think it's the real America. And I don't think that Trump's victory, in my view, somewhat accidental, in which he lost the popular vote by 3 million votes, is an indication that there is some kind of great swell and surge of this happening. I tend to believe still that the United States is an incredibly open, welcoming society. I think it has historical issues it has had to deal with and is dealing with. But on the whole, if you were to ask me, do I think, has my experience as an immigrant in America been a positive one? I would say overwhelmingly, it has been an incredibly positive one.
Thank you. And as you mentioned the political situation here in the U.S., we have an election a week and a half away, and we had a question about what is your view on what's going to happen in a week and a half?
Look, yeah, there's no way to pretend until I could parse it and give you kind of lots of analysis, but I think Biden is going to win, and I'll tell you why. I think that the thing about Biden's poll numbers is, ever since he wrapped up the South Carolina primary, which is to say he became the kind of inevitable Democratic nominee, he has led Donald Trump in matchups by between 6.5 points and 9.5 points, which is roughly where he is now. I think he's about at 9 now. He's had a steady lead, in other words, over Trump. And he's had a steady lead that is larger than Hillary Clinton's lead over Trump ever was. So even at 6.5, it's larger than Clinton, as you remember, was leading Trump by about 3.5 points and actually won the election by 3 points in terms of the popular vote. So this is a larger lead. It is more durable, and it does span many of those states that Hillary Clinton was very, very tight on. It's going to be a tight election. It's a divided country, but I think that the best indication of my theory is look at Donald Trump's behavior towards Biden. Biden was the guy he was most worried about running against. Biden is the guy he thought could beat him. That's why he went to the Ukrainians and said, I want you to give me dirt because I want to discredit Joe Biden. That was in the primaries when Biden was not even doing that well. So, Trump has has his own political skills and genius, and he saw right away that Biden was the most potent adversary. Look, there's another way to read this whole Trump phenomenon, which I tend to subscribe to, which is that he's never been that popular. Donald Trump has had the lowest approval rating of any president in recorded history. He has the highest disapproval rating of any president in recorded history. A majority of Americans always disliked him and disapproved of him. But he happened to run, and this is a point Nate Cohn of the New York Times makes. He happened to run in 2016 against the second most unpopular candidate in modern presidential history. And because of that, and by the way, I don't endorse that view of Hillary Clinton, but it is simply a statistical fact that she had very high negative ratings. Because he ran against her, and frankly, a certain amount of luck in 3 states with 70,000 votes, he won. But I think that people have used that victory to try and interpret a kind of massive wave of this kind of dark populism in America, where that's really not true. Trump is a very unpopular president. Between 52 and 57% of the American people have disapproved of him throughout his presidency. So, it's when you're thinking about how to characterize America and how to characterize the general mood of the country, I think that's a pretty, now, all that said, I want to be clear. As I said, I think it's a tight election. I think that the country is divided. And the Senate will be very tight. And I don't believe that there will be some kind of massive Democratic wave. I think if the Democrats get the Senate, they'll get it 51-49. So we are going to be, unfortunately, we are going to stay in this very tight, divided, polarized period of American history for a while. But I tend to think that the majority is more hopeful and optimistic than dark and pessimistic.
Thank you. To build on that a little bit in terms of how the rest of the world is watching this election and watching the United States, much of our work at Cultural Vistas is about U.S. soft power. How do you see the U.S. brand? How has it been damaged, and how does it remain? How can it remain strong going forward?
Look, it's not a question of what I think of soft power. We have many good measures of what has happened to American soft power. The easiest one to look at is the Pew surveys. The image of the United States is at its lowest point since Pew has been doing these surveys. It is significantly worse than it was at the height of the Iraq War, and the trust that the world places in the American president is at its lowest point in recorded history. So that part is simply a matter of fact. The question of how much can be rebuilt. Look, I think a substantial amount can, just as after the Iraq War, you got Obama and those numbers bounced back a lot. But there is a difference, I think. With the Gulf War, the Iraq War was about what America did. Right now, I think the question the world has is about what America is, what it stands for. And that has always been the thing that people admired about America. So when I was growing up in India, people criticized America all the time. There was lots of stuff about the CIA and American foreign policy, and America was seen as pro-Pakistan and things like that. But people still had enormous admiration for what America was as an economy, as a society, as a democratic system. And that, I think, has been shattered by Trump, and shattered because of his disregard of democratic norms, his disregard of democratic institutions, the way in which he has used rhetoric to vilify his enemies. the way he's attacked the free press. So I think that that piece of it is going to be harder because people are going to say, well, it seems like that there's this side to America. There's this reality about America that we didn't realize. So I think it's not going to be a restoration that Joe Biden can do. It's going to be a restoration that America has to do as a society, as a country. So I think all of us, in a sense, in a way, have to show, first of all, to ourselves, more than anything else, who we really are as a country, what values we hold, what values we stand for. And we have to do that affirmatively, not just negatively. It can't just be about not liking Trump. It has to be about really embracing a different vision and executing on that, and then communicating that to the world. I think that part will be hard. It will be harder than it was to bounce back from the Iraq War. American foreign policy is as I say, it's about what we do, but it's not about what and who we are.
Great point. So last question I'm going to ask is maybe more of a personal question that came up around, we see so much darkness around us. What's fueling your optimism? I walked away from reading your book in just in a very hopeful frame of mind. And even today, you're giving us a lot of hope. You talk to the world's leaders all the time. What's fueling that personal hope that you have during this moment in history?
Sure. I mean, part of it, is probably a temperamental. I am an optimist. I believe that it's both the right way to look at the world. It's also the only way to look at the world. Nobody who's a gloomy pessimist ever starts anything, ever builds anything, right? I mean, you have to believe to be an entrepreneur, to be a social entrepreneur, to be a visionary, to be a leader. You have to believe, and you have to make others believe. But I also think it is the right way to think about the world, because look, at the grandest level, look at the world over the last 200 or 300 years. I mean, look at how much progress we've made in fighting poverty, in helping, emancipate women, giving minorities greater share of space in the political and social realm of most countries, tackling the disease and things like childhood mortality. All those numbers have done extraordinarily well, despite war and revolution and things like that. And why is that? Because I think what happens is there is a struggle, and there are movements back and forth, but you have to keep your eye on the prize, which is the constant forward motion that we have to be trying to achieve. And as you achieve that, there are going to be setbacks, there are going to be zigzags, there are going to be people who are, but it doesn't change the reality that we are actually moving forward. And that doesn't, it doesn't change the reality that it's only by moving forward that you solve these problems. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting that this is sort of inevitable, or that there is some great structural wave making this happen. No, it's happening because human beings are pushing in this direction. So you have to keep expanding that zone, and you have to keep expanding so you realize, as we learn more, we discover that we need to be careful about the environment. We need to be careful about the kinds of the way we're living. We need to be more inclusive and expanding the zone of tolerance for more and more people. And as we do each of these things, it rubs up against somebody, and they protest, and they get angry, and they get annoyed, and they feel like, why are you disrupting? Why can't we just go back to the old, simple, settled ways, right? That's this whole idea of this sort of Garden of Eden that America was in the 1950s, is premised on that idea that, why are we being so disruptive? Why do we have to start asking pesky questions about, whether it's right to honor Confederate generals and leaders? But it is precisely that process of examination and expansion that is the American story. The American story is really about this constant search for renewal and remaking and reinvigoration. So I look at that mess, and I say to myself, there's something very creative happening here. And I don't like, there's a lot of the silliness that I don't like either, but I try to keep my eye on that prize. And I think what I would say to everyone who gets disheartened is, just remember, think about what the world looked like in the 1920s. Think about what it looked like in the 1940s. Think about it even in the 1960s with all that turmoil, right? And at the end of the day, who won those struggles, right? Whose version of America has ended up, or whose version of the world has ended up moving forward? It's people who wanted to expand tolerance and freedom and opportunity, who wanted the world to be one. So there'll be movements backward, but at the end of the day, I do think you have to believe at some level that human beings are fundamentally, uh, uh, I wouldn't say fundamentally good, but have fundamentally a good side to them. My own view is we have many natures, and our leaders and our circumstances can bring out either the best in us or the worst in us. But we have very fundamental traits that are about cooperation, that are about empathy, that are about sympathy, that are about altruism. And if we can summon up those better angels, that's what changes the world. And I believe it's also the right way to live. You want to be, even when you don't succeed, you want to be caught trying.
It's a great way to end the conversation, Fareed. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't had the opportunity to pick up Fareed's book, please do. It's a great read, and really, again, provides a lot of hope and a lot of historical perspective as well. So, Fareed, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
So we are going to move into taking a little bit of a break. We're going to show a quick video. No, we're going to take a 5-minute break right now. So get up, stretch, walk around, and then we're going to come back and hear from our corporate leader awardee, Sherry Slate from Cisco. So we'll be back in about, let's say 1:05 Eastern time. Thanks.
Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Okay, does this work better? Let's try this. Can you hear me now? Can you all hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, here's the problem, the challenge or the opportunity. My PC on an earlier call went out, my PC audio. So I wanted to dial in, but when I dialed in, you all are getting an echo. So we'll just wing it. And I know it's going to be great, Cordell. It's our day. Emily, it's going to work. We're just going to believe. Like, can you hear me okay though?
I can hear you. You're great.
Okay. And if you break up, I might just ask you because it's a little funky on my side. Just,
Yeah.
could you just repeat that? Is that
Sure,
good?
sure. Let me give you my cell as well.
Oh, yes. That would be great. Okay.
240
Uh-huh.
779
Uh-huh.
1863.
863. Okay, perfect. If for some reason, it's going to be great. No worries.
Yeah. I wore a black tie for you. Come on.
Oh, you know what? I got dressed up for you because I had to tell you, my call started at the crack of dawn and Rachel said to me, Sherry, you have to be dressed for your call. So I had literally.
You guys look great. And
Great.
everyone, we can hear you. So we'll get started in just a moment with your talk. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then I'll hand it over to both of you.
Alrighty.
All right, here we go.
Okay. Give people just maybe 30 more seconds. We're going to move into our next segment with our awards program. So very exciting, and I feel very uplifted and inspired by Fareed's talk. And I know Sherry and Cordell will continue that level of enthusiasm. So we'll give it one more minute. I told people at 1:05. So Sherry and Cordell, where are you joining us from today?
Just Rockville, Maryland.
Awesome.
Welcome to my home, Sacramento, California.
Awesome. Is the air quality better out there now? I'm hoping.
Yes, it's much better. Thank you for asking.
Good. Okay, it's 1:05. We'll go ahead and get started again. So now, as I mentioned, we will transition into the awards segment of our program, and we'll be recognizing our corporate partner and 3 alumni for their work in advancing diversity, inclusion, and equity. I'm pleased to introduce one of our alums, Cordell Carter, to moderate. Cordell is really, I would say, an incredible human being. He's going to share a little bit more about his leadership story. But Cordell took part in one of our signature fellowship programs, the Robert Bosch Fellowship Program, where he spent a year living and working in Germany. He's also part of our alumni council and has been so committed to advancing the vision of global engagement and education. And during his full-time role, he currently is the executive director of the Socrates Program, a global education forum at the Aspen Institute. So Cordell, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer, and congratulations on an amazing event thus far. Very, very quickly on my leadership story, I can be condensed as the following. I am completely contrived, but for the power of education to transform the mind and the wonder of international exchange to expand that mind, I wouldn't be here. So that's why I'm involved. I want that opportunity for others. It is my incredible honor to recognize the Cisco Corporation, and one very special leader at the Cisco Corporation is accepting this corporate award on their behalf, Sherry Slate, who is the Vice President and Chief Inclusion and Collaboration Officer for People and Communities. How are you, Sherry?
Oh, Cordell, I'm doing great. Thank you. And it makes me smile to see you and to get to spend a little bit of time with you and everybody today.
Likewise. Now, Sherry, you happen to be at one of the most progressive Silicon Valley firms in the land. The commitment of Cisco to diversity, equity, and inclusion and global collaboration. It actually speaks to your title. It also speaks to the way that Cisco has done business, and that's the reason why it's being honored today. And I wonder if you could talk to us about your leadership story, and don't be as brief as I was, but you're the star of the show, not me. But I would love to hear about your personal evolution, the impact of international exchange, and then how we get to this very interesting role that you now have at the Cisco Corporation.
Oh, wow. Okay. So first, let me start by sharing a little bit about who I am. I am a 48-year-old Black woman. I am first generation on my father's side, born in this country. I have lived, worked, and studied outside of the United States. I am the mother of 2 college-age children, one who's in her master's program and one who's a junior. I have been married to the love of my life for the last 25 years. I have worked across 4 different industries in 5 different disciplines. I have a learning difference, which means that sometimes school was challenging for me. But even with all of that, I found myself sitting here in the role that I have, doing work that I wake up every single day loving. And that's because I get to bring all of what I just shared with you. Those are my dimensions of diversity. They are the things that make me uniquely me, to create value as I think about how I create opportunity and possibility for people every single day. So I find myself in this seat because of those dimensions of diversity, but I too did an international exchange. I do think the perspective that I bring to the work that I do was cultivated at an early age of 15 when I lived in the south of France on international exchange. And it was probably one of the most eye-opening and I would say career-shaping experiences in my life. That said, I do work that is in service of other people, and you don't do work in service of other people if you don't get proximate to them and ultimately figure out that that is part and parcel to what your purpose is on the earth. So that's my story.
Oh, fantastic.
I know you've done a lot from an international exchange standpoint as well. So I would love to hear kind of from your perspective what you bring to the table from the exchange that you did as well.
You know, I am a loquacious person. My dad's a minister, and in an evangelical church, you are part of the show as well. So my sisters and I, since the age of 3 or 4, were always up in front of adults, essentially entertaining them. So I'm not accustomed to being a wallflower. The international experience, the first big one was the World Cup of 1998. Of course, I had to go. So that was quite a different experience than what I had as a Bosch Stiftung Fellow 10 years later. Coming out of law school, I just wanted to practice law at an interesting place. I had an opportunity to do climate change law with the Kreditanstalt Wiederaufbau. It's a big bank in Germany. And this idea of not being able to fully express your thoughts was the most humbling experience of my life, because I just didn't have enough German vocabulary to say the joke with the perfect timing that I could in English, or to accurately reflect what I'm reading from this contract that I think is problematic. But it also created a tremendous amount of empathy for those that can't speak for themselves, or those who don't feel like they belong in a room. So the globalism, this global mindset has given me actually far more empathy, because there, by the grace of your creator, go you. And so you never want to be in a situation where you're creating a place where people feel like they don't belong and they don't have voice. And that has certainly impacted the way I lead. What about you and your global mindset you've received from travel?
So I have to tell you, listening to your story is an absolute anchor to kind of our thinking and our philosophy at Cisco around the power of a global mindset. When I think about Cisco and our purpose to power an inclusive future for all, that's a really big remit. And the pathway of, we're in service of solving really big, complex problems every day. I mean, just take one of the many that we are knee deep in, right? We've got 3.7 billion people who are unconnected in this world, right? We're in service of connecting the unconnected. We fundamentally believe that connection is a human right. And so in trying to solve for that and making sure that, looking at what's happened with the pandemic that has been both an accelerant and a widening of this divide, we need people who are thinking about this problem from every angle. What you just talked about, Cordell, as you think about this notion of not being able to express yourself in a language where you are wanting to express yourself in a different way, you have walked in those shoes, you come at challenges and opportunities from a different lens. I will tell you, I spent some time with Mark Chandler. He is our GC, our general counsel here at Cisco, and he had a really profound statement. So like you, Cordell, he spent time in Germany. I believe the program that he went through is now being administered by Global Vistas. And what he said to me was, he said, Sherry, he said, the international experience is akin to what Brian Stevenson has actually offered us as a company. So Brian Stevenson came to speak to Cisco last November, and he really encouraged us to get proximate to the things that we are curious about, to the things that we don't understand, to the things that ultimately we want to have an impact with. And what Mark said was that the experience in the international exchange that he had was about getting proximate to people and culture and challenges from a different lens. It allowed him to walk in someone else's shoes and to have an empathy that would allow him to apply his value in both business as well as in his personal life in a really different way. I have to tell you, when I think about Cisco's purpose to power an inclusive future for all, we need that kind of lens. We need that kind of empathy. We need that kind of curiosity inside and outside the walls of our company to actually deliver on our promise. So a global mindset, it is a critical success factor for us.
Yeah, and I wonder, because as I reflect upon Cisco, I went to Carnegie Mellon for graduate school, and Cisco was a much desired employer. They spent a lot of time on campus, and we were thinking of Cisco then as an upstart like every other technology company in 1998, 1999. But here we are 21 years later, and Cisco is as relevant, as successful as it has ever been. Very quietly, it is living its values and showing that doing good actually has a decent profit margin as well. So I wonder, was that the thinking that created this very interesting, looks like 2 or 3 roles that you currently occupy?
Oh, my friend, I have to tell you, I said to somebody the other day, go find a leader of inclusive future and strategy and an inclusion and collaboration officer. You won't find it. And the reason why you won't find it is because Cisco is known for seeing around corners. We are known for seeing opportunity and possibility where other people see nothing. And when we think about our remit to power an inclusive future for all, and to be thinking about how we deliver an impact for all of our stakeholders, the role that I have becomes a new emerging leadership role that actually can be that bridge. My organization sets and delivers, curates, if you will, the people strategy for the company, which is about how do we create a pathway for serving our entire stakeholder stack. It sits side by side with the business strategy so that they deliver our purpose as one. We also have inclusion and diversity. We call it inclusion and collaboration because we're looking at the value creation for people at the intersection of inclusion, diversity, collaboration, and technology. And then last but not least, and probably so important in this landscape, is this new currency. It's called inspiration. And we're looking at how do we leverage the power of inspiration to deliver an outcome together with our employees, customers, partners, suppliers, and into the community. But I say that to say that doesn't come without incredible partnerships. And when I think about the work that we have done with Cultural Vistas, I mean, we have an 8+ year relationship. There's one that has just been so fruitful for us that hails out of Canada with our Meraki team. And here's what happened, and kind of here's what we're learning, and here's how it fits with our notion of inspiration and impact. So we have, for the last 8 years, had a really powerful relationship with both Ontario Tech University and Waterloo in Canada. We bring in interns every year, and we have some 106 hires out of that relationship. But what's really fascinating about what has transpired is that usually when you bring interns in, you're thinking that they are coming in and they're going to soak up all this knowledge from the company, right? And that's what that's kind of the foundational expectation. Here's what we've learned. Oh my gosh, they give so much back in terms of value. We are soaking up so much knowledge from them. This exchange, international exchange, as well as this two-way learning, where we see kind of all of our stakeholders, and we believe great ideas can come from anywhere, has allowed us to actually thrive in this relationship, delivering value one part to the students and then another part back to our engineering teams, our business teams, our sales teams. It's been a fabulous exploration and partnership.
That's an awesome lessons learned from that experience. And since we're referencing lessons learned, we are in the midst of one of the most interesting periods in American history. And I would actually go a little further and say in the history of liberal democracies. You have a global pandemic, you have economic strife, you have emerging tech that is disemploying people or replacing them. You have demographic shift that's terrifying some people. You have a lot going on. Any one of these issues would be a pretty big deal. We have them all simultaneously. And I just wonder, how has Cisco leveraged its values to contend with our current state of this moral reckoning happening both here and abroad? What lessons that you all have learned that can be shared broadly with the rest of corporate America?
I would say two things. Get really clear on what you care about and what you believe. Two things for us. Number one, we deeply, deeply, deeply care about our people. And at the onset of the pandemic, and even before that, I will tell you, we stepped into this place and space of paying attention to them in a really different way. It's not just every manager paying attention to the people on their teams. It's us as a collective whole paying attention to each other. We have taken very big steps into this space around mental wellness. And I will tell you, being the recipient of the solutions that Cisco has brought to bear, I have used them, as well as making sure that the people on my teams, my mentees, my sponsees have and know that they have these resources, has been a lifeline in what has happened since the onset of the pandemic. Here's what I will say from a Cisco perspective. We started a number of conversations, a weekly check-in. And what's really beautiful about that weekly check-in is it has expanded the conversation, has helped us to get common language, context, and understanding about A, how we're feeling, B, how we're doing as a company and as individuals, but more importantly, to be able to see each other. You see, from a Cisco standpoint, we have what we call a conscious culture. And in a conscious culture, a couple of things are really, really important. One, it's built on full spectrum diversity. It is free from bias, harassment, and discrimination. It is a culture where we see our people and the environment, and we look to take care of both. And then most importantly, we empower and expect that if any one of us as an employee sees something that is counter to who and what we are, we say something. That said, in this motion, we have gotten really good at asking, how are you doing? And in saying that, and I think I asked you that the other day on the call, I truly want to know, how are you doing? Mm-hmm. And knowing that it is okay not to be okay today. And if you weren't okay today, Cordell, as a Cisco employee, I've got a number that I can extend to you to call so that I can make sure that I got my arms around you so that we can get you to a place and space where you are able to be your best. And that might be today, or it might be 4 months from now. But the invitation and the welcoming is always on. The second thing around beliefs is how it shapes your actions. There was one part about the pandemic and that being catastrophic, but there was another, oh gosh, incomprehensible murders of people. And when that happened, we got really clear on what we believe, and that drove our actions. And we've got 5 beliefs, and those beliefs are global, and they are always on. First is that we believe in tech for good. We're going to continue to build technologies that connect people and communities and create new possibilities. But what we won't do is leverage them to facilitate oppression or injustice. We believe in justice. We believe it's a calling. We believe it's our calling. We believe that communities that are on the margin have the right to live in a fair and just world. Now, we don't own how to fix all of that, but we will certainly do our part. We also believe in insecurities. We have long believed in the insecurity of, basic human needs, but we have ushered in this really clear belief in addressing the insecurity of being. What is that? The insecurity of being is that you could be targeted with racism, hatred, violence, discrimination, just because you are a member of a marginalized community. And that can be in the physical or virtual space. We believe that we have the power to coalesce our employees, customers, partners, suppliers, and the community around the things that we want to drive change towards. And then most importantly, we believe that what you are curious about says a lot about you. What you are curious about drives you to get proximate to something. And when you get proximate, you can actually have the empathy to actually create actions that are going to be sustainable and deliver the outcomes that you want. So in this landscape, we have gotten really clear on the things that we care about, our people and communities and impact, and our beliefs that will guide the action that will guide us, and how you all will see us show up in the world against the things that we care about.
I wonder, for the corporate leaders that are listening or tuning in right now, and hearing you describe your culture at Cisco, that this is not something that can be created in a short amount of time. This takes some investment, some consistency. What characteristics of your executive team have fostered the creation of a culture that you just described?
Oh, it's such a good question. Authenticity, humility, this curiosity to want to get close to, like, this notion of proximity. I mean, Brian Stevenson was a game changer for us last year when he came to speak to Cisco. He and Chuck Robbins, our CEO, are very good friends. And this notion of getting close to the things that you care about, or getting close to learning about things so that you do care about them, has been a game changer. And I will tell you, every single one of our leaders at the very top of the company, I mean, are just so oriented around getting close to the challenges that we care about so that we can do something about them. I would say the other piece that is so important is not living in fear. You see, fear is what has stood in our way of having and seeing the kind of breakthrough. I would say, I don't even want to say breakthrough, because I think in some cases we've had breakthrough, the kind of overflow impact that certainly every single one of us deserves to see in our lifetime. Our leadership team exemplifies that. I can tell you, I sat in a meeting on June 1st with our entire leadership team. It was one of those check-ins. And so, oh, by the way, our entire ELT joins these check-ins every week. They have been doing so since the onset of the pandemic. But when this second pandemic of a different kind happened, they all sat there with 40,000 of us all on a call like this. And it was ugly and raw and real and painful and beautiful all at one time.
Yeah.
And the only way we got that gift was because our leadership team didn't live in fear. And it was a gift.
Yeah. I don't want to pry too much, but I just wonder what is some of the feedback that you received from your colleagues after that really frank and raw conversation. I'm assuming following off of George Floyd's murder. We had a similar one at the Aspen Institute that was equally raw, actually starting with Mr. Arbery, Ms. Clark, and then Floyd. And so we had 3 weeks of it pretty raw. And I'm just wondering some of the feedback. What were you hearing people saying? What was as Maya Angelou said, how did they were made to feel after hearing those words and seeing those actions by their leaders?
So I will tell you, we heard everything from I couldn't be more proud in this moment to I am so glad I lived to see this day, to why are we having this conversation and should we be having the conversation, to where do we go from here, to are we going to continue the dialogue because we need more space and to process. And then there were comments like, exhale, I'm in tears, I'm sad, this is great. It was a range. And I will tell you, personally, I've been doing this work for 15, I want to say 20 years. It probably is 20 years if you do the hard math.
Let's go with 15.
15. It was a milestone in my personal and professional life that I will never forget. I will never forget it. And I will tell you, there are 40,000 people who were all part of that conversation who will never forget it either.
And speaking
will
of,
never be the same, Cordell. We left that conversation knowing we would never be the same.
that's incredible. And, I was talking to my own CEO about this, this particular period in the annals of leadership are going to go down as some very memorable times. MBA students will be writing and thinking about case studies from this time 100 years from now. And so I wonder, given just the intensity of your culture, is anyone writing down what they're experiencing and seeing and doing for posterity in terms of case studies or white papers, something that's going to help the market?
So I have to tell you, Cordell, what you're knocking on the door of is what I call the foundation that's going to remind us that we are ready for the next moment, because we are in a moment. This is not the first one, right? This actually, when we had our conversation on June 1st, we actually started it with almost a bit of a history lesson in what has happened in our history that has made us ready for this moment and for what our employees could expect to see from us that would come after, that would speak to our actions, i.e. the beliefs that I just shared with you. There are 13 actions, really bold, intentional, deliberate actions that we launched in September. But we set the tone for that readiness to step into the kind of action that's going to be sustainable based on what we had learned from the other moments. And I will tell you, we had a moment in 2016, we had one in 2012, we had one in 2010, 2008, 2004. I mean, like, and in every single one of those moments, Cordell, we had the opportunity to do what we did on June 1st. But to get to how we showed up on June 1st, it came with learning at every opportunity that we had to learn. So I would say I love your suggestion, and if you're okay with it, I'm gonna take your great idea and suggest it back that we actually do document and share publicly our lessons learned both before and after, because it's powerful.
I think it's an affirmative duty for leaders to do that because there's just a lot to learn, and frankly, I think it'd be cathartic for leaders because these are very stressful times, and as a leader, you take on the burdens of your organization. So if your people aren't feeling great, guess what? It's hard for you to feel great. You're not disconnected from them because you are proximate. But speaking about these things and all these wonderful topics that we've delved into aren't the same as results. And Cisco has actually achieved a tremendous amount as it relates to its corporate diversity. I think now it's ranked #1 on Fortune World's 100 World's Best Workplaces in 2019 and 2020. There's the market is responding affirmatively to you, but I'm very interested in, were there any specific things you all did vis-a-vis your diversity levels that others aren't doing? Any innovative practices that we can share? And to the audience, we are moving to Q&A after this, so please send in your questions, but I did want to get one more question in to Sherry.
So I would say the most important thing for us in the last 5 years, so Chuck Robbins has been our CEO for 5 years. Listen, he is so fundamentally committed to this work. And not only is he committed to this work, but his leadership team is committed to it. I will tell you, when Chuck took his seat as CEO, what he did said a lot about where we sit today. First thing was we expanded to full spectrum diversity. We have long since been about diversity. In many cases, and if I can just be very honest and candid, that those efforts were tied to women, and in many cases, white women. And so, and there was such goodness that we learned in the motions that we had delivered, but it wasn't enough to do for all. So when we did expand to full spectrum diversity, here's what we saw. We saw movement across every category of diversity that we measure. It's a game changer. But the other thing that happened with that is that it allowed us to see bigger and wider around what was possible for people, the opportunities as we started to create a conscious culture that would lead us to mental wellness, a dimension of diversity, right? Yep. So I think the biggest thing is A, leadership, B, that commitment to diversity and inclusion as foundational to the culture and who you are and how we show up. And then certainly full spectrum diversity that actually gets us to not only be in service of all, but to actually create the solutions where we're looking for equity and fairness and opportunity across our people practices to ensure that we are creating opportunity and possibility for the full spectrum of diversity inside the walls of our company.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Lou Gerstner's quote that he was the CEO of IBM when I joined 20 years ago. He says, at the end of the day, strategies and ideas are just pieces of paper without people. People is what makes this thing work. And so it is obvious that you all have taken that one hook, line, and sinker, and congratulations on your results. Okay, so we're going to go to some questions. For those of you all that are not familiar with the Slido app, you can ask your questions in the chat box as well, and I will pick it up then. But if you don't have one, I'll just keep asking Sherry questions because I'm enjoying this. So Sherry, I wonder, as a veteran member of the tech sector, if that changes your approach to talent management. It's like you're not out seeking endorsements from private equity firms or VC firms, so their influence is very minimal at this point, right? You are an established titan of industry, and I just wonder if that affects the way you approach talent versus, say, someone that's approaching an IPO or 2 years after an IPO?
I have to tell you, I think what's going to be really fascinating as we think about the future of work is that the skill sets that we are looking for today are going to be different than what we'll be looking for in 6 months, a year, months from now. Like the shelf life of skill sets is going to continue to need to evolve because it's going to get shorter and shorter. And adaptability is going to be kind of, I would say, the I want to say killer application, if you will, but it is your ability to be adaptable is what is going to be required for long-term success in any one industry. Now, here's what's really beautiful about being adaptable. Cordell, you talked about your experience in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about being in that moment and understanding that you weren't maybe as funny in German as you were in your native language.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about you were there for a year?
A year, yes.
A year. And I'm sure your experience at the beginning versus your experience at the end was different.
Oh, yes. You
and
adapt.
why? Did you adapt?
You absolutely, you adapt and you thrive. It's the
You adapt
messier.
and you thrive.
Yes.
What you have experienced is the same kind of adaptability that we are going to see as it relates to skill sets in the workplace. That is a skill set that we need, right? That is your ability to be able to adapt both short and long term is going to define where and how you go with your career. And I think one of the best ways to rebuilding that muscle is through international exchange.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, some questions from Slido. Sherry, how do you stay optimistic as a leader during such challenging times?
Here's what I'm going to say. You have to lean on your posse. I don't know if everybody knows what that word is. So let me say, they're your network, your people. Listen, I wake up every single day in service of creating opportunity and possibility for people. And that is great when it is easy, and it is great when it is hard. And it is exhausting if you have to do it alone. The beautiful thing is I have peers who are so stellar, peers and allies doing this work all over the place, where I can lean on them when I am tired. They lean on me when I am tired. I have the best team in the world. Literally, they tell me all the time, we got it, back out and go fight another fire. But your networks matters. I have a saying, I keep it in my office, happy is. And in every situation, I'm looking for how do we get to happy? How do we get to the glass full? Because I will tell you, we get to choose every day how we show up and how we take in information and or how we deliver it back out. So how do we stay energized? I focus on what I choose and in terms of how I feel, and then what I can offer to others. Sometimes our biggest gift to someone else is to offer room, space, a shoulder in the moment. And that then gives them the ability to go run the marathon that we need them to run, so that we can have breakthrough in the spaces and places that we want to see.
Great. Another question. Do you face challenges promoting Cisco's corporate culture and values in different countries? If so, how are they presenting themselves?
Fascinating conversation. Let me question. So here's what I would say. I would say we are learning, and we have this, we do great places to work in the world, around the world. And so, Cordell, to your point, we are the #1 best place to work in the world 2 years running, which,
wow.
I mean, 2019 and 2020. And I just heard Michael Bush talk. Michael Bush came and spoke to the Cisco family at one of our check-ins I think it was last week when we announced. And what he said was, you don't make the world's best list without being best in countries around the world.
Mm,
And so I will tell you, I think it's 5+ countries where we are #1 best place in those countries.
mm,
And then we're in, I think, the top 5 to 10 in most of the places around the world. So, and don't quote me on that, I will get the stats and send them back to you. But to answer your question, I do think that that is a signal, but not the only signal. I think your people tell you how you're doing around the
yes,
world.
yes.
And our people have told us through their retention, through their desire to want to plant themselves here and grow, through
Mm,
their willingness to serve the communities in which they are working on behalf of this company. It's so loud.
yeah.
And it speaks to that question of it gives us a signal of how they feel about being we love where we work. We are Cisco. We often say hashtag best team. And that's what we are hearing around the world.
That's great. Here's a great one. It kind of speaks to your personal journey. If someone is listening to this conversation, but not yet in senior leadership ranks at his or her organization, but they want to see positive change in the way the organization approaches diversity, equity, and inclusion, what actions or practices would you recommend that person take?
Mm, that's a good one. Oh my goodness, did you stump me today? No, you didn't. So here's what I will tell you. Couple of things. First, do you have a sponsor? Number one, to that person, do you have a sponsor? If you don't have a sponsor, go get one immediately. And I will tell you, go to multiplydiversity.com. And let me tell you why. Why does sponsorship matter? Sponsorship matters because it is a vehicle by which you can get proximate and drive change. One
Mhm.
part for yourself and your career trajectory, and one part for whoever is investing in you and the company that you have planted yourself in. Let me tell you why sponsorship matters. Sponsorship matters because there's a gap. You know what the gap is? The gap is 1 in 5 majority males has a sponsor, 1 in 8 women have a sponsor, 1 in 13 minorities have a sponsor. Here's what we know to be true about sponsorship. We know that from a sponsorship standpoint, people with sponsors are 21% more likely to move up in their career. What we are finding from a Cisco standpoint, and let me give you some context. Cisco fundamentally believes in the power of sponsorship, one part for career and one part what it does for the culture of the company because of the proximity that it drives. 100% of our vice presidents at Cisco have taken the multiplier effect pledge and they have a sponsee. Here's what we are seeing drive the culture change. Our sponsors, and here's the thing about picking a sponsor as an executive at Cisco, it must be at least 2 dimensions of diversity different from yourself.
Could you
Right?
explain a
So,
little more?
yes. So, for example, it is very well known that sponsorship exists in this world. And most often people sponsor people who look exactly like them, And if that's happening at the top of companies where there is no diversity, that means they are sponsoring people exactly like them that are not going to change the mix of talent at the top of companies. So what we ask our leaders to do is have 3 sponsees, and 2 of them, you can pick one exactly like you, have at it. But 2 of them must have dimensions of diversity that are different from you. So I'll give you an example. My sponsees. I have an Italian female from New York who's LGBTQ. I have a Black male 50, oh gosh, if I get his age wrong, he will, if he's listening.
It doesn't crack. It's okay. Just
Yeah,
go.
yeah, no, he looks right. He looks younger. 53, right?
Okay.
I have a Black female who's 26. I have a transgendered best friend who asked me to be their sponsor. I've got 4, and I will tell you what happens when you get proximate as a sponsor. You get to live through and learn through the eyes of someone else. You get to be their edge to help them see bigger and wider around what's possible for them. And in doing that, As a sponsor, you learn. So to that person out there, I love your question. I would say get a sponsor and start having an influence on how leadership is thinking about dimensions of diversity like you by getting to know you and sponsoring you to your next great space and place inside that company. That's one of many, but that is the one that I am deeply passionate about. And I will tell you, it changes the hearts and minds and perspectives of leaders. And it does it because they are all in leveraging their social capital and corporate equity on your behalf, which means if you are two dimensions of diversity different from them.
Wow, that's you've introduced some new terms. I had never thought of it that way, which all the more is justification for this award that Cultural Vistas is giving your corporation. So Cultural Vistas is pleased to name Cisco as a Corporate Leadership Award recipient for 2020. We are recognizing Cisco for their contributions to the global workforce and commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. With locations in 100 countries, a mission to build bridges and technology, Cisco has long built a reputation for being a place where diverse cultures thrive. Since 1999, Cultural Vistas and Cisco have worked together to host approximately 40 interns and trainees from across the globe every single year. Through the cooperative education program with the University of Waterloo, Cisco has provided opportunities for hundreds of Canadian students to compete for international internships. They are, and I repeat, they are indeed the ideal corporate partner. They're bridge builders, and they have amazing people like Sherry Slate. Thank you so much, Sherry.
Oh my gosh, Cordell, that was so kind. And on behalf of Cisco, I want to thank Cultural Vistas for this award and recognition of our ongoing efforts to invest in developing extraordinary talent around the world. It is a great honor to receive recognition from an organization with a mission as powerful as Cultural Vistas. You see, bringing together people from diverse backgrounds and geographies is aligned to Cisco's own vision to power an inclusive future for all. You see, we do strive to be a company that gets proximate to the communities and the people that we serve to ultimately solve our biggest challenges. We strive to be one that believes in equity and fairness for all, one that sees all of our stakeholders and not just the majority, one that creates new possibilities for people inside and outside the walls of our company across the full spectrum of diversity. To do this, we need partners like Cultural Vistas. Cultural Vistas has been a partner helping us to facilitate internships and international exchanges around the world, and we are so grateful. The future of international exchange, it's at a crossroads. We're being forced to reimagine what's possible, and we want you to know that Cisco is all in. Cisco wants to and will serve as a bridge in these challenging times, helping to foster a global dialogue, mutual understanding, and bold, deliberate, intentional action. We are committed to powering an inclusive future for all by creating opportunity and possibility for the full spectrum of people around the world. And we are truly honored to be receiving this award today. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Now we have a video.
Thank you, Cordell.
Thank you. See you soon.
See you soon.
Yes. Okay, we have some technical difficulties, but it's to be expected in these digital galas. This is my 5th one since March, so very robust. Here we go.
I'm delighted to be able to join you and congratulate Cisco in achieving the 2020 Cultural Vistas Corporate Leadership Award. This is an extremely well-deserved award and one that Cisco deserves to be rightly proud of. For over the past 20 years, They have been valued talent partners with us here at the University of Waterloo and have hired hundreds of co-op students into various work locations, different cultures, and also different environments within teams, enabling those students to participate in wonderful learning experiences on the various projects that they've been engaged with. Thank you, Cisco. You've been a wonderful talent partner, and we aim to and hope to be able to continue that relationship both now and also in the future.
Hello, Cultural Vistas global community. I'm Puneet Sharma, and I'm the head of the AI Cardiovascular Research Group at Siemens Healthineers. Siemens Healthineers was honored to receive the 2019 Corporate Leadership Award, distinguishing us as a leader in providing meaningful international exchange opportunities in the field of healthcare. On behalf of Siemens Healthineers, we would like to congratulate this year's 2020 Corporate Leadership Award recipient, Cisco, who follows in our footsteps of advancing international collaboration and skill development through its work-based training programs for international talents. Congratulations, Cisco.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, thank you again, Sherry. We will now talk to some of our alumni award winners. Very excited to talk about 3 alumni that have done just phenomenal work. We have those that are from the US and from abroad. We have Dr. Linda Lopez. She is the 2020 Distinguished Alumni Leadership Awardee. She's a 2017 alumni of the Welcoming Communities Transatlantic Exchange out in California. And we have a video for Linda. Well, I can keep going. I think I will. How about I introduce? Okay, there we go. There.
My name is Dr. Sylvie Nansha. I'm the chairwoman of the African Network of Germany and TAM. Linda Lopez and I met through the WCT program in the USA, and I felt very happy when she visited us in Germany. I was really impressed when I discovered her citizenship campaign to increase the number of naturalized citizens. She inspired me to start a similar campaign in Freiburg called Ich bin gerne Deutsche. Dear Linda, you are a powerful woman, you are a great person, you are very engaged in migration matters. I congratulate you from the bottom of my heart for the Distinguished Alumni Leadership Award. You have really earned it through all your hard work. Lovely greetings from Germany.
Hi everyone, I'm Mariana Martinez, the co-chair of the Alumni Council at Cultural Vistas. It is my absolute pleasure to be here with you virtually to congratulate Dr. Linda Lopez for the Distinguished 2020 Alumni Leadership Award. Linda and I had the chance to participate in the Welcoming Communities Transatlantic Exchange Program back in 2017, and I can tell you that I share fond memories with her visiting different cities in Germany. Linda's work advancing equity and inclusion for immigrant, refugees, and low-income families is indeed inspiring. A great example of this that I can personally speak on is a connection that she made possible with a philanthropic organization. This connection essentially transpired to a $750,000 grant that helped one of the most vulnerable populations in Detroit, the undocumented population. Linda is a true inspiration of all of us working on making cities more welcoming and inclusive. So once again, it is my pleasure to congratulate Linda. And Linda, un abrazo muy fuerte. Thank you everyone, and cheers.
Great, thank you. We'll have brief remarks from Dr. Lopez.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Cordell. That was so beautiful, the video. I remember meeting Sylvie in Germany. So first of all, I'm very humbled by this award. Thank you so much for this honor and recognition to the Cultural Vistas, for the Cultural Vistas Distinguished Alumni Award. As a child of immigrants, it's been my experience to learn firsthand what it's like to, build welcoming and inclusive communities. And as some of the speakers mentioned earlier, COVID-19 has really magnified some of the inequities that exist in our society. And I think we as leaders have a responsibility to ensure that no one is left behind. I've been inspired by the resilience and the sheer grit of refugees and migrants who I've met throughout the years, and I will continue to advocate for them. As Sylvie mentioned, I was part of the transatlantic Welcoming Communities Transatlantic Exchange in Germany in 2017, and had the great opportunity to meet Syrian refugees who migrated to Germany at the time. And I was struck by the sheer resilience that these communities have and the sacrifices they've made to build a better life, in this case in Germany. I dedicate this award also to all the mothers who leave their home countries to build a better life for themselves and their children. My mother is an example of this sacrifice. She herself left Ecuador in the 1960s on her own to Los Angeles, California. And she is my hope and my inspiration for the work that I do each and every day. So thank you so much. I'm very humbled for this award. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Congratulations again. Now we have Miss Sherry Altilano. She's a 2020 Alumni Impact Awardee and a 2015 alumna of the Young Southeast Asian Leadership Initiative, known as YSEALI, Generation Earth and Go NGO Conference. We have her congratulations video forthcoming.
Hi everyone, I'm Jules Giang, a fellow Cultural Vistas Exchange alumni since 5 years ago. So I'm here to congratulate Sherry Atilano, or Ate Cherry. We call her Ate, that means an older sister here in the Philippines. So I met Ate Cherry way back in 2015 through a YSEALI workshop in Cambodia that was organized by Cultural Vistas, and then many other activities after that. So Ate Cherry is a person brimming with wisdom. So every time you talk to her, she will make sure that she would share tons of wisdom, of pieces of advice, and many other things. So it's a really joy to talk to her because I really learn a lot. And right now, Ate Cherry, you're an awardee of this 2020 Alumni Impact from Cultural Vistas. So I wish to congratulate you because I know you really deserve it. Since then, you've been working really hard to make farming, as you say, humane and sexy, not only for the people in the agricultural sector, but also for the youth. And I think we are winning in terms of this sector because we really need to entice the youth sector and all other sectors to really appreciate the agriculture and to become part of this sector. So as your younger brother, I wish to congratulate you once again. And all regards to my friends there in Cultural Vista. See you soon.
Hello everyone, my name is Lisma from Indonesia. I am an alumna of a program that Cultural Vistas administered in 2015, YSEALI Generation Earth. I would love to take this opportunity to congratulate my fellow alum, Cherry Atilano of the Philippines, for being the 2020 Alumni Impact Awardee. I met Cherry for the first time in YSEALI, and I know that she's contributed a lot in the sustainable farming and agriculture in the Philippines through her organization named Agria. So I'm sure that she deserves this award. Once again, congratulations, Cherry, the Filipina farmer.
Great. Thank you so much. Sherry, please have some remarks.
Wow. Please, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you so much everyone for this award. And I'm a bit emotional, you know, seeing Jules and Lisma, whom I met because of Cultural Vistas, actually, especially Lisma, 5 years ago. And I really dedicate this award to all the farmers, especially the smallholder farmers who are working in the Philippines. We're working now with more than 20,000 farmers in the country. And, you know, especially right now during this COVID-19 pandemic, where the prevalence of hunger and malnutrition is very, very high. It's doubling in number, you know, 690 million of hungry people. And in 2030, we'll be reaching 890 million people, where the highest is in Asia, where I'm located and where our work is, and the fastest is in Africa. So I really dedicate this work that a lot of women and young people would be recognized in their contribution to the agriculture sector, as we have a global problem of aging farmers. And hopefully, you know, the work that we do in the Philippines will not only inspire the Filipinos, but would really inspire the world. And through this work with and recognition from Cultural Vistas, hopefully it can intensify our voice, that it can reach every corner of the world, every hungry person in the world, and every malnourished children in the world will reach with it by our work, and will inspire more people to also do what is, you know, good for humanity, especially on food security, hunger, and malnutrition. So once again, thank you so much to my Cultural Vistas family. This is such an honor to be, you know, be awarded together with other wonderful awardees. Congratulations also. Maraming maraming salamat po from the Philippines.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you so much. Our second award, a third awardee winner is Mr. Isawa Nabanavalu. He's a 2020 Alumni Impact Awardee and a 2018 alumnus of the Young Pacific Leaders Program. We're going to play his video right now.
Hello, my name is Phoebe Heibeck and I am a Program Development Officer at Cultural Vistas. I am so excited to be with you all today to celebrate and recognize Isoa Nebenvalu on being awarded a 2020 Alumni Impact Award. Isoa, your work through the Young Pacific Leaders Program and in advocating for the deaf community in Fiji, in the Pacific, and beyond inspire us at Cultural Vistas and many more around the world. Thank you for all that you do in making our world a more inclusive, better place. We are so excited you are receiving this award. Congratulations!
Falaflayatsu and Kia ora, my name is Inangaro Vakafi, and I know Esau because we were part of YPR 2018 in Hawaii. I've always known Esau to be very respectful. He's passionate about the work that he does. He's proactive and always tries to be inclusive in everything that he does. And that's why I'm inspired by the work that he does, not only in Fiji, but also on behalf of the Pacific region. So I find that Esau has many great qualities as a young Pacific leader. And congratulations, Esau, on receiving the Cultural Vistas alumni honor. I cannot think of anyone more deserving, and I look forward to seeing more great things yet to come. Kia manuena, moe whakau e ki hawa tau ngahua, moe tau whakauka.
Great, great. Now, Isawa, and I neglected to mention his interpreter, Miss Saru, will join us for remarks.
Gail, you're unmuted, so you can speak for Isoa. Were you able to hear? We don't hear you. Gail, can we try to restart your sound, please?
we appear to be having some technical difficulties in bringing you Isoa's remarks for this award. And so what we'll do is make sure that it's recorded so that everyone can see it. But in the interest of time, we're going to move on with the rest of the program. We have a panel discussion with all of these alums, and we're going to start actually with Dr. Linda Lopez. One thing that we all have in common, and that is that we've had pretty significant experiences internationally. And Dr. Lopez, Linda, tell us about that experience that you had back in 2017 with the Welcoming Communities Project.
Sure. Thank you, Cordell, for the question. So in 2017, I was a delegate and participated in this program in Germany with some other colleagues from 4 other cities in the United States. And we visited, in my case, Freiburg, Dusseldorf, and Berlin. And so, 2017 was really a moment at the height of, the whole Syrian refugee crisis. And many refugees were at the time, being welcomed to Germany, to resettle in Germany. And I think my experience with that exchange is number one, that, it really broadened my perspective and my worldview on the different, sort of issues and factors that drove Syrian refugees in the first place to be, migrating to a place like Germany. And I think from my standpoint, in the work that I was doing at the time, I was working for the mayor of Los Angeles, and I was heading up his Office of Immigrant Affairs and Refugee Affairs. That experience really changed, my own perspective on how to build, welcoming and inclusive communities, even in a place like LA, which is a very diverse place. 220 languages are spoken. We have a lot of different, diaspora communities in a place like LA. But I think one is, it really reshaped my perspective on how to, one, develop programs and initiatives that are culturally, appropriate, and also linguistically, appropriate when it comes to working with refugee populations, even in a place like LA. And then second, I think the second observation from that experience is we learned a lot about how Germany in that moment was developing, different structural systems and really transforming their service delivery models to ensure that, refugees that were being integrated in different places around Germany had workforce opportunities, language opportunities, and really building, these communities of welcoming and inclusive communities. And I think that experience really transformed me in terms of my own sort of way of thinking about how to structure programs, how to structure initiatives, and how to really build out welcoming and inclusive communities, even in places like LA. So it was an incredible experience. And then the exchange part too, learning from them, and also being able to exchange some of the work that we were doing in Los Angeles at the time to integrate refugees, I think was really an incredible opportunity.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to move on to Sherry. So Sherry, tell us about the work that Agria is doing in the Philippines and how your connections across Southeast Asia and the world can benefit what you're building.
Well, thank you so much for that beautiful question. So I started farming and teaching farmers at the age of 12 because I was so inspired in how the lives of the farmers in the Philippines are actually very, very poor, especially the smallholder farmers, with an average hectareage of land in around a hectare. And most of the time they have a lot of children, right? And most of these children are not actually in school. So it's been 22 years in the agriculture sector. And, I started Agrea as a social enterprise 6 years ago. after working with ex-convicts and criminals in the Philippines, converting them into farmers and sending them their children to school. With the agri work that we've been doing, Philippines is such a beautiful country. We have 7,107 islands, and it's so beautiful. It's so lush. It's so green, but it's so poor also in so many aspects. Most, especially, it's because we forgot our farmers. And I always believe in this proverb saying that when the farmer is poor, so is the whole country. So I think that summarizes our situation in the Philippines. So for the last, for 22 years, the work in the smallholder farmers actually is encouraging a lot of people to work and listen to them, especially our government, other private sectors, multi-sectoral companies, and also other CSO or nonprofit organization. So what we do in Agria is we're not only doing business, it's always like good to do good and do well, right? That's a business formula that we have. So right now, especially with this COVID-19 pandemic, we've been working with more than 20,000 farmers. And, these farmers are actually left behind for so many years. But aside from that, we also have a farm school. And this farm school that, I helped build since 3 years ago is actually one of the A-star farm schools in the Philippines that is recognized by the government. And right now, we're putting one more farm school, so completing like our three more farm schools in the country. And it's growing and growing in numbers, and we're training a lot of farmers in the process. What's beautiful with our farm school is we teach farmers on capacity building, not only on values formation, why their importance in the nation building of this country, why their daily lives contributed to the GDP of this country. And we also teach them sustainable agricultural approaches and practices, but more importantly, teaching them financial literacy. And our farm school designs modules and training curriculums that it doesn't require you to read and write. We have a lot of farmers who don't know how to read and write, but they graduate from our farm school and they becoming an amazing agripreneurs in the process. But more than that, I think bulk of our work is also on women and the youth because there's very little recognition on women in the agriculture sector. We're actually pushing a bill right now. I put up a nonprofit attached to Agrea, and we're pushing a bill in Congress on Magna Carta of women in agriculture sector because there's so much disparity between the male farmer and a female farmer. Even if they're doing the same, the salary or the wage is totally different. And another work that we do is actually with the youth. I remember, I had a meeting way back with President Obama in in Malaysia, and I asked help on how to work with our youth, especially in war zone areas in the Philippines, because every time there's war, these youth are displaced or they're threatened. So because of that, we actually work a lot with more than hundreds of youth in the Philippines that now these youth leaders are actually reviving war zone areas to be farms. They launched this, farms, not firearms, right? And but aside from that, another amazing work that we actually did is with Brunei. We with the Sultan of Brunei, with also with the YCL, where cultural vistas so active. We work a lot with Southeast Asia youth on agripreneurship, eco-friendly approaches to business, and also how to create more impact. Not only earning money but also creating local impact. So it's becoming bigger and bigger, and hopefully we can replicate our work not only in Southeast Asia or in Asia, but hopefully we can reach other corners of the world, maybe through cultural vistas help by sharing culture. And I just want to share everyone that the first culture, I guess, is agriculture. Toiling the soil, toiling the land, and feeding people.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Sherry. We're going to actually go to Isawa now to see if we can get his remarks from his award, and then we'll go right to the Q&A. There is a pretty severe echo. Well, Linda, I have a follow-up question for you. We'll give you a moment, Isawa. But Linda, I have a follow-up question. What specific tactics or strategies did you all use for welcoming communities in Los Angeles? Because as my mind reverts back to the time in which you were in office, it was some of the most challenging political environment nationally on immigration that we've had in a very long time. So I'm dying to understand what tactics you pulled from that international event that was helpful for you in your role with the mayor of Los Angeles.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question, Cordell. I think that obviously, building welcoming, inclusive communities was definitely more doable under a federal administration that was more receptive to immigrants and refugees. So I think that for a place like Los Angeles, because of the fact that we have such a diverse, array of diaspora communities from all over the world, from all corners of the world, that have, come to Los Angeles for different reasons. I think that it's been for us, at least at the time, a lot of it in 2017 was very reactive and really about making sure that communities felt safe and that they weren't targeted because of their immigration status. So we did a lot of investing our strategy and our efforts to making sure that communities that were, for example, undocumented in this country, who have children that, are US born citizen children and mixed status families, didn't feel like, they were fearful of government. Because I think that's one thing that was really apparent. Just the sheer, level of anxiety and fear in communities, particularly immigrant and refugee communities, was something that we immediately had to deal with because it was a reality for many of them. And then there was a sense of like distrust of government because, they think, that government is sort of a bad actor. And so I think there was a lot of educating and information sharing that had to take place. So we created a lot of different workshops on, making sure that the community understood what their rights were. That that LA in particular, our mayor at the time, made sure that the city of Los Angeles was a city of sanctuary, a city that was welcoming, and we devised a policy at the sort of local level here in Los Angeles, where we basically said to all communities that the city itself is a sanctuary city, and that they should avail themselves of services because they are definitely able to in a city like Los Angeles. So a lot of it, I think, was really education, information dissemination, making sure that we build those bridges with our communities that we had already established in our civil society organizations that we worked with to ensure that immigrant communities and refugee communities weren't fearful of government. So I think that was really the main effort. It was really to ensure that on the integration side, on the immigrant refugee integration side, that our programs and services would still be available and making sure that communities understood that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So we're going to go back to Isawa because inclusion is about intention, and we intend to make sure he is included. So your remarks for your award, congratulations again for the Alumni Impact Awards. And when you're ready, we'll shift right over to some quick Q&A.
Thank you. And my apologies again for the technical difficulties. Yes, so I am extremely excited about this award, and I greatly appreciate the work and the commitment that's done by every stakeholder. And I'm really privileged. And I really thank the motto that we all respect and use, that no one is left behind. So there's been a lot of contribution from stakeholders, from other colleagues from around the globe and the Pacific region. And I'm thankful for this. It's an eye-opener, and I'm so thankful to the inclusiveness that Cultural Vistas has accorded us in this program, and for coordinating the programs. And I thank you all so much.
Fantastic. Isawa, you attended the 2018 Young Pacific Leaders Program. So yes, tell us about that. And then you've come back as a mentor. And as we know, mentorship is such an important component to leadership development. So can you talk about your experience as a participant and then evolving into a mentor, so giving back to the very same program that gave you something?
Yes, for me, this was the first time I heard that a deaf person participated in this or was included in this program. It created a lot of impact on me personally, because I got to work with other hearing persons, colleagues, and peers from the region. We had the same visions and goals. We had our different directions, but we were we had the same goals, and we were traveling our own journeys. And this was really, this created a lot of impact on me, because I came to see and respect it, and I also was able to practice the dynamics and the diversities that came within others, the other participants. And I also, we used like a twin track approach. I learned from my other colleagues, and they learned from me as well. So becoming a mentor after the Young Pacific Leaders Program was again an honor for me, because I had other deaf friends join in the program that year, and I was happy to share. And I not only mentored my deaf friends, but I also mentored other youths, young leaders of the Pacific. So this was a great opportunity for me to share what I had experienced, and also to learn from them, and even to provide an enabling environment that we can all work together. So in other areas of health, education, and inclusiveness. And we also, my core points would be from the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, the Universal Declaration. So this was a great toolkit to use and to share with our other colleagues. And it was good to be sharing with them and also learning from them.
Great. Now you noticed that we had technical difficulties as we were trying to connect, and we worked our ways through that. It happened fairly quickly, just showing some limits of the technology that we use every day in our new normal. And I wonder if you could express to us what, or in your mind, the most important thing that the global community could do to ensure inclusion of differently abled people around the world in our meetings, in our conferences, and our work.
Thank you. One thing that we often talk about is not one size fits all. So whatever access to communication, information is different. And we have different needs for different persons. You will see that I'm lagging in my or in my communications or in my signing, because I'm speaking through an interpreter. Mm-hmm. So there will always be a lag, and there will always be, but we're trying our best to work up to par. So, and also, but we're getting accurate information, but you will just see that there are a few legs in there. And then again, it's the access to information and communication, the access to network, and providing it in user-friendly formats. So there are different ways that communications and informations is passed on or is disseminated. We still use the radio, we still use the newspapers, so, and even word of mouth, and even spreading the news and signing into each other. I believe that we can still pass on information, and it is extremely important to be passing on accurate information, because any misinformation, any misinterpretation, or any miscommunication can result in other dangerous issues and even death for some.
Great, thank you so much. And I just have a final question to all of our awardees. We're going to start with Sherry, then Linda, and then Isawa to bring us home. And that question is as follows: how can we better support our alumni to build more equitable pathways to global opportunities? We'll start with Sherry.
I guess I really want to foster, collaboration with each other, because there are so many alumni under the cultural vistas, and they're like scattered all over the world. They have different expertise. Like for example, for me, I'm in agriculture sector. Maybe later on I can work with Linda on how, we can collaborate from her end of the world and her work also. Maybe I can be of help, in terms of my expertise in agriculture. And if there's a chance, I can work with, the people that she's working, but I don't have that expertise and she has that expertise, so maybe we can collaborate each other. So what I'm trying to say is, for all the alumni of Cultural Vistas, we are all connected, especially with this internet right now. And so we're so connected. So hopefully this will, inspire all of us to continue collaborating, continue creating, and to really continue coexisting, in this world. Especially, it's difficult, it will be a new challenge for all of us. But for me, it's also a time for awakening, a time for really working together, and a time to be kind to each other, and a time to be more compassionate on what other people would say. I really wanna, to close, I really wanna congratulate Linda and Isawa. Isawa, you're such an inspiration. I was just listening to you, and I was just, looking at you, and this is actually what we're doing. Sorry, I'm becoming emotional because we work with a lot of farming communities, and in every farming communities, there are people that are not included. Most of the time, they're bullied because of their inefficiencies, and it's one of the things that we're actually addressing, because when we teach them in our farm school, they are the most effective people, you know, and because they feel always excluded. And the moment we give them opportunity, they really show off, and they really become more effective agent of change in their community. So thank you. You're actually, I did not expect. It's almost 3 a.m. in the Philippines, and I'm crying because of, you inspired me so much. And this is the beauty of Cultural Vistas, alumni inspiring each other. And for sure, because of this inspiration, we can definitely change the world to be better and bounce back better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Linda?
Oh, thank you so much, Sherry, for sharing that. Yeah, it's I think what's really inspiring about all of this work is that we, all of us as leaders, I think, are very much about, making an impact and making a good impact on the people that we serve. So I think there's this, I guess, calling to serve others. And I think that that's the value system that I strive for in my own personal leadership. And I think that, one of the things that was really, I guess for me, inspirational today was when Sherry was talking about also that you have to kind of pull people in your network, and that you have to be able to reach back in to really create more opportunities for people to collaborate. And I mean, I think just in my own, experience with Cultural Vistas, having reached back to Mariana, who's also an alumni who lives in Detroit and works for a council member there with this project that she mentioned during the video. To me, that was part of, reaching back into our network and being able to say, okay, I'm working with this foundation, this global foundation now, and we really want, to help people in Detroit, vulnerable people in Detroit. And it was like an immediate thing. I reached out to her and I said, hey, here's this opportunity to get some funding to really help people during this COVID-19 moment in humanitarian assistance and cash assistance. So I think it's just a matter of, connecting with the alumni network in a way that's both meaningful, but also impactful, and finding opportunities for that to happen. So to the extent that I think that, the Cultural Vistas Alumni Network can do more, networking, and I know that we're going to do that in a few minutes, but networking, and also being able to, share, the work that each of us are doing to really have a positive impact on our society and positive impact on people. I think that would be one thing that I would, suggest or recommend to build out, this network that's obviously filled with incredible leaders, and just figuring out, how we can really come together around, some of our values and some of the ways that we lead, and that we want to do what we want to do in the future.
Great, thank you. Isawa, you have the last word. Again, the question is, how can we better support our alumni to build more equitable pathways to global opportunities?
So let me just touch on how I reached out, or I'll talk a bit on the deaf community in the Pacific region. Imagine the hearing people, they have unlimited or a lot of vocabs and words. And for us deaf people, we have very limited vocabs. So imagine us, when I went out and when I started video calling my friends, deaf friends in Papua New Guinea, in the Solomon Islands, they had never heard about other funding opportunities for young people. They had never even heard about the YPL and Cultural Vistas. So this was a way of me reaching out to them and telling them of the opportunities that are there. This included Kiribati and Samoa, all these deaf communities in these Pacific Island countries. So again, collaboration is very important. Teamwork, as well as networking, and to continue to build a positive and a suitable environment that is accessible to youths with disabilities, and also to make sure that they're also part of the discussions from in all stages of any project or plans. So it doesn't matter if you have a disability or not. It's important that we appreciate each other, the values that we each have, the uniqueness in each and every one of us. And I'm in awe with the project and the business that's happening in the farming, the agriculture there in the Philippines. And then again, I think it's important that education should be, quality education should be given to each and every child, irrespective of their abilities or diverse abilities. So I also congratulate each and every one of you. And I also personally, I look forward to more inclusive networking and collaborations in future. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I can hardly think of 3 more worthy alums to receive awards this year. Please join me again in congratulating Linda, Sherry, and Misowa as our Alumni Impact Award winners. Also, let's congratulate again Sherry Slate and Cisco Corporation for being our Corporate Award winner. We will now be joined by Jennifer Clifton.
Thanks, Cordell. Thanks to all of our awardees, and thanks for staying up late to be with us this afternoon. Boy, that was very inspiring. A couple of words come to mind in terms of themes that we heard today: collaboration, community, commitment, and calling. I think it just is a reminder of us recommitting to those values that we all hold so dear to our hearts. So that concludes our program for today. We do invite you to join us at our after party, where you can network with our community and make those connections. To join, please find a link in the chat. You can click on that after we wrap up, and the link will take you to a separate gathering. At the after party, we'll be breaking out into smaller groups so we can all have some deep conversations. If you run into any issues, please contact us at events@culturalvistas.org, and we'll be here to assist you. As a reminder, if you'd like to make a contribution to Cultural Vistas, you can text CV 2020 to 44321. And again, we really appreciate your support. Before we do part ways, I wanted to give you some details about our event tomorrow. It will be the second and final day of our program that will begin at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The agenda tomorrow includes a cultural program and a global trivia competition. We'll hear from alumni of the International Visitor Leadership Program, the State Department's U.S. Department of State's premier professional exchange program, who are finding ways to collaborate across borders during the pandemic. Bring your appetite. We'll also be joined by Chef Bruce Barnes for a reflection on food and culture and a live cooking demonstration of seasonal pierogies. Finally, bring your trivia skills for the chance to win a grand prize ukulele from CF Martin Guitars. It's going to be a lot of fun, so I hope you take the time to join us. And again, you can follow the link in the chat to the after party. See you there. We have a video of a couple more of our alumni to share, but feel free to take a moment, stretch, get a glass of water, a cup of tea, and we will regroup at 2:45 in about 6 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, my name is Ben Kennard, and I'm from Long Island in New York. I'm a 2016 Congress Bundestag Youth Exchange alum. When I lived with my first host family in Cologne, Germany, I was one of 5 kids in the house. We had students from China, Brazil, and Turkey, and my native German host brother too, and 2 dogs. When I moved to Münster, I lived with 4 cats, a roommate, and a young married couple. And during my time with them, they ended up divorcing. Of course, I have endless stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that came from my time living in these hectic environments. But I took so much more from my year abroad than these stories alone. I developed deep relationships with the people I was living with and learned an invaluable lesson. People are doing the best they can, leading the lives they're living. For me, it's an incredible privilege to play just a small role in the narrative of their lives.
Hello, my name is Olga. I'm a Fulbright scholar and a social entrepreneur from Russia, currently studying community health promotion at the University of Arkansas. I believe in power of sports to unite people and to make change. And this is why I founded a project called Same Sport, which unites people with and without disabilities around sports to promote inclusion. And this summer, I had a great opportunity to study as an intern at the University of Tennessee at the Center for Sports, Peace and Society. And this was a great chance to meet people with same ideas, same passions, and exchange experience. I'm very grateful to the Cultural Vistas team and Muscat team to make it happen. And I wish everyone to believe in themselves, believe in their dreams, and believe that we can be the change.
Hi, my name is Reagan Wilson, and I am from Washington, D.C. by way of Atlanta, Georgia. I graduated from Howard University in 2018. In 2017, I participated in the Cultural Vistas Fellowship, where I lived and worked in Bangalore, India for 2 months. And in 2019 through the beginning of 2020, I participated in the Congress Bundestag Youth Exchange for Young Professionals program, where I lived in Heidelberg and in Saarbrücken, Germany. When I traveled to India through the Cultural Vistas Fellowship, I definitely got that travel bug. And because of the Cultural Vistas Alumni Network, I had a really good resource that helped me hone in on what country and what type of program would provide the most meaningful international experience for me. My favorite part of living in Germany was being able to go hiking in the Black Forest. I love trees and I love to hike, and I think that's probably one of the most beautiful places in the world that you could do so. I went with one of my host families and they were super welcoming. They showed me around. I got a drink though while we were on that trip as well. So that will always be a great memory for me. To other alumni around the world, I just want to say hi. I miss airplanes too. Hopefully we will be able to travel and see each other in person again soon, but until then, just hang in there and we'll make the most of this challenging time.
Hi, my name is Kaylin Patterson, and I'm an alumni of the 34th cohort of the Congress Bundestag Youth Exchange Program. After graduating from Morehouse College, I thought that this would be a great opportunity for me to gain necessary engineering experience and expand my job prospects. I now work as an engineer at the United States Department of Defense. I recently took part in the Future of Work Day of Mentorship seminar, where I was able to mentor recently displaced program participants in ways that they can leverage their international experience and find jobs during this difficult time. I think that mentorship is an integral part of any success story because it allows you to learn from the experiences of others. I'm grateful to Cultural Vistas for extending multiple opportunities for me to study abroad, and I hope that future participants will continue to stay positive and expand their horizons during this difficult time.
Hi everyone, I'm Nami from South Korea and a 2020 participant of Korea West program. I've been doing my internship at Easter Seals, located in Silver Spring, Maryland, since last November. Easter Seals is trying to make profound positive differences in the daily lives of people of all ages with disabilities, special needs, military background, and their families. As an HR intern, I have learned a lot of HR's responsibilities, and even during this time, I come to the office every day. And this experience helped me decide to come back to the US and get a PhD in positive psychology and industrial organizational psychology in my future. I know this is a really tough time for all of us, but I think this is a good chance that we can focus more on ourselves and consider what we really want to do in our future. And we can realize how precious the people around us are and appreciate our previous normal life. I believe all of you have been doing really, really well, and please believe in yourself. Thank you.